I just want to introduce very briefly Steve Early first, and then Jovanka Beckles, who are joining us both from Richmond. I've known Steve for, I think, almost 10 years now, and we met through Labor Notes, which is a network, rank and file, union activists, and other workers trying to build a movement from the bottom up, a democratic membership-controlled workers movement across this country that's out this beautiful little publication for many years now. Does a lot of training and education, capacity building. And Steve, I worked for CWA for 27 years as a representative and organizer. And throughout that whole period, he's been doing what he's been doing since retirement, is cranking out amazing analysis and reports and articles on what's going on in this weird, wacky, wild country of ours, especially from looking at how people are organizing and trying to resist that. So having said that, I'll let Steve make some comments just about why he wrote the book, what we're trying to do in the book, and then we'll hear from Jovanka and talk about what's going down right now.
Great, thank you. Well, let me start by doing a last century organizer union thing and hand out some literature. We start this in opposite directions. This is just a sample of Progressive Alliance campaign material from last fall, and a new kind of sign-up card that we're using that summarizes some of the accomplishments of the group over the last 10, 12 years and ties its local work into the resistance to the Trump administration. I want to thank my brothers and sisters in CWA, including Robert, for making this hall available to us today. I spent, as Peter said, 27 years working with CWA locals, mainly in New England, but many of them were involved in struggles like this local has been involved in for over a year to get new contracts at AT&T, supposedly a labor-friendly employer. A low bar these days in corporate America, as Robert can tell you. Its reputation notwithstanding, doesn't make it any easier at the bargaining table when you're representing both existing members and newly recognized ones. I want to thank the National Union of Healthcare Workers, Peter's Union, for being a great supporter of the book. My older daughter just went back to work for NUHW as a nursing home rep this week in the Bay Area, so long-time family ties with the NUHW. Brother Dan, who you just met, and everybody needs to encourage him to finish his forthcoming book, updating one of the best books that has ever written about workplace health and safety struggles. I want to thank him for a wonderful forthcoming book review of Refinery Town, soon to appear in Monthly Review in an upcoming issue. It's great to be here also with Brother Phil Kim, who was an essential part of our Labor for Bernie, Get Out the primary vote effort last year, and also has a great union background with the hotel workers. It's great to be here with two other Bernie backing union represented groups, the CNA and the postal workers. There were only 6 unions. They were on the right side.
UCAFT endorsed Bernie.
What's that?
UCAFT. We endorsed Bernie in the post of National AFT.
I applaud both the 100 local unions around the country that endorsed Bernie and the smaller group of 6 national unions that did. There should have been more in both categories.
Yes, sir.
I want to thank all the Green Party activists for being here. I probably have the distinction of having voted for my old Boston area neighbor Jill Stein more times than anyone in the world. 5 times, in fact. Twice for president, twice for governor of Massachusetts, and once for secretary of state. So if there's anybody who's voted for Jill more than that, let me know. And I hope people go hear her speak. She ran a great campaign following up on Bernie's work within the Democratic Party. Let me just start out by saying that I had the great good fortune to move from Boston to the Bay Area 5 years ago, to land in Richmond, and immediately notice what incredible work people have been doing there for already more than a decade. And Richmond, as many of you probably know, has gotten a lot of well-deserved press over the last few years for being a model progressive city, for being a source of all kinds of innovative public policy initiatives at the municipal level, for standing up to the biggest employer in town, Chevron, for fighting big money in politics, for raising the minimum wage, for reforming the police department, for trying to improve the environment for a predominantly non-white, working class, and poor community of 110,000 people. So I basically started writing about all of these topics myself. The good folks at the Unitarian Church Connected Beacon Press in Boston were good enough to publish the book. It's been doing real well. It's only been out 6 weeks, already in its second printing. So the Unitarians back in Boston on the real Beacon Hill are celebrating the success of the book. Any UUs in the house? All right. Well, if this was in New England, half the group would be Unitarian affiliated, but 3 is pretty good. So I owe a great debt of gratitude working with the wonderful people at Beacon Press. Let me just say that one of the things I try to stress in the book, with a little help from the foreword by Bernie, is that as I've observed it, one real key to the success of the Richmond Progressive Alliance is, to use an old-fashioned church term, is its ecumenical approach. When people first started thinking about coalescing around a broader banner in Richmond, they were doing great work, but like many of us on the left, in somewhat fragmented, single-issue fashion. There were people defending the homeless in Richmond. There were people trying to help day laborers form a day laborers association, stop police harassment of their members. There were people who'd been beaten up by the police in the Latino and the black community and wanted greater police accountability. There were people, even 15 years ago, wanted a living wage campaign to raise local labor standards. There were people out of the Green Party who'd been involved in Peter Cameo's campaign and Ralph Nader's 2000 campaign, who locally were very involved in environmental issues. You had city employee unions like SEIU, Local 1021, who had suffered terribly because of the dysfunction of City Hall, the near bankruptcy of Richmond, the corruption and mismanagement that added to all the other problems related to economic injustice and environmental degradation. Well, all of those disparate elements, including Peace and Freedom Party members, Green Party members, dissident Democrats who were black and Latino, members of 2 or 3 different socialist groups, and independent voters, they all could have continued beavering away, on their separate tracks. But fortunately for Richmond and its people, they decided to set some bigger picture differences about the nature of the system and long-term solutions aside and coalesce around a 10 or 12-point program for municipal reform. And they succeeded in building an organization that I think is an interesting hybrid model. It's based on voluntary dues-paying membership, 300 or 400 people who pay dues to be part of the RPA. There's also organizational affiliates reflecting the labor community coalition that it represents. So SEIU is an affiliate, the CNA is an affiliate, environmental groups like the APEN and Communities for Better Environment are affiliates, and the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment, which played a very important role in our recent rent control campaign. So you've got organizational affiliates, individual members, and you have a year-round program of organizing around community issues, and then you have an electoral strategy based on implementing the original 10 or 12-point reform program that was adopted at a People's Assembly in 2004. So this is not the usual model of political activism, right? Because people tend to get involved in electoral stuff every 2 or 4 years, popping up only then, maybe with good candidates, maybe with not such good candidates, but not connecting in such an integrated way year-round labor and community organizing with an electoral strategy. An electoral strategy that really sets progressives in Richmond off against the competition by the refusal of everyone backed by the group to accept business contributions in any form. So the candidates run, like Bernie did, as corporate free. And the opposition, includes some good people, some bad people. Javon could tell you more about them. She's had to deal with them in a very personal way for years. But most of them you could generously and generally describe as corporate Democrats. they do take money from Chevron, from the Chamber of Commerce, the Manufacturers Association, the developers, and it helps to draw the line right there and say, you're going to be corporate free, they are not, and then to run candidates, as the RPA has done, over the last 12 years as part of slates, as part of teams. Now, people in unions who've been involved in internal union elections think, well, what's so radical an idea about that? We often have campaigns that are based on people teaming up and running on a common platform. Well, in our electoral political system, particularly at the local level, that's actually fairly rare. Most people run based on a kind of individual, entrepreneurial, career-driven instinct that, hey, I'm a good guy or gal, I have some good ideas, I'm going to run for the city council, and then maybe I'll be mayor, and then I'll run for the assembly, and then I'll get termed out, I'll run for the state senate, and maybe I'll be in Congress someday, and I'll do good things, and every step of the way I will take the corporate money, but, you know, that won't sway me, I'm an independent thinker. It doesn't work that way. You know, we've all experienced the disappointments always waiting to happen with our friends, and not so great friends of the Democratic Party, environmental groups, labor groups, immigrant rights groups, all kinds of groups put a lot of hope in individual candidates. They get in, they come into pressure, and they are not able to deliver. So the other piece of the formula in Richmond has people running together on a common platform, not taking business money. You could see how our two candidates last fall were marketed or branded, right, as Bernie-backed, and the only two out of a field of 9 who favored rent control. A big difference between them and everybody else running. And, you know, when people get in, after they've been elected as part of a team or a slate, holding them accountable, right, and having a continuing relationship between them as the folks on the inside and the folks on the outside, it's always difficult to maintain, but it's easier to maintain and sustain and to build. Particularly when you elect people who don't just see themselves as traditional tribunes of the people, you know, leave it to me and I'll set you free, but, you know, who get in there and then use the bully pulpit of being a council member, being a mayor, to help rally and build the grassroots movements that put them into office. Last fall, as Javanka can provide more details on, not only did Richmond voters pass by a 2-to-1 margin rent regulation and the new requirement that landlords can only evict tenants with just cause, a rent rollback to the levels a year ago, but they elected 2 more progressives to the city council, joining Javanka and Dale McLaughlin and Eduardo Martinez. So now, not only does the progressives in Richmond, for the first time, since the group started, have a progressive majority. It has a progressive supermajority of 5 out of 7 on the Richmond Council. So I'm going to stop here and turn it over to Javanka. Let me just say that if there's any heroine in the book, it's her. She is in her 2nd term on the council, and she has been an incredible leader, an incredible inspiration to young people in the community. And there's a chapter in the book called Our Tuesday Night Cage Fights. And that was someone's description or label or name for city council meetings during a particularly dreadful period in 2013, 14, 12, 13, 3-year period. Much of Javanka's first term was a Tuesday night cage fight in which the forces of evil, you might call them, including our friends at Chevron, incited and funded and orchestrated incredible personal and political attacks on her, which you can describe and which are described in the book. And then, of course, in 2014, through Chevron's Moving Forward Independent Expenditure Committee, spent over $3.1 million smearing her in billboards, in ads, in mailers, and her running mates, and propping up a pro-corporate team of candidates. And that victory really is the core of the narrative and the story of the book. Overcoming big money in politics, the Richmond progressives, David and Goliath, Javanka versus Big Oil and its local allies. And that, that victory, assisted by Bernie, came to town. We had a big town hall meeting, 500 people. He helped us raise thousands of dollars, which was, I think, probably the biggest pre-campaign rally in the history of Richmond. It was a tremendous and inspiring uphill fight. So and the other thing that my portrait of Devanka, probably reveals in a way that she won't talk too much about is how hard this work is day to day. I mean, it's not just collectively you have to have patience and persistence over 13, 14, 15 years to accomplish, all the things on this little list on the card, but on a personal level, this is a part-time job being a council member, and even a mayor is set up to be part-time. If you have a day job, a union member day job, a county worker in social services, as she can tell you, you are tired by the end of your regular workday. And then you have to go to a Tuesday night cage fight, or a neighborhood council meeting, or an emergency meeting about some incident or accident or crisis. And that's in a non-campaign year, when you're doing all of those things plus running for re-election. So, I, in the book, even try to pay tribute to some of our adversaries who spend a lot of time in long meetings. Not that they do much good in them, but it takes an enormous amount of commitment to bring about change in a city. And the electeds, as they're called, really are the tip of the spear and are the most invested personally and politically. And we all owe a great, great debt to Devanka Beckles for the personal sacrifices she has made to bring about the changes that have generated so much publicity. And it's very easy, I can tell you, to write and talk about what to do, transforming City Hall. It's a hell of a lot harder to have to actually do it. So thank you so much for coming today.
I'm not going to talk too long because I really want to hear from you. I want to find out what it is that you're interested in and what your questions are. Before I start, the reason you were hilarious, what's your name, Cameron? Yes.
Me, Mario?
Mario, you were hilarious because I'm from Panama. I was born in Panama, raised there until I was about 9 years old before I came to the United States. And so, I'm Latina, as well as black, as well as lesbian, as well as women. I tell people I cover pretty much the whole gamut, right? But that's hilarious because my wife, she's Mexican, black as well, and I crack up because she says Vallejo, and I'm like, it's Vallejo, babe. And so we have these conversations about Mario as opposed to Mario, right? And then I'll say San Jose, and she goes, well, why do you say San Jose and not San Jose?
I get it.
Thank you. So thank you. I'm really happy and honored to be able to be a part of this conversation with Steve, this amazing author who has really done a fabulous, amazing job of chronicling, just what we've been through, the history of our progressive movement in Richmond. A little background about me. We were living in Alameda at the time. This was in 2005. And our son was still in school, and so we didn't want to, uproot him from his school, from his friends. So, but we both worked in Richmond at the time, so we commute from Alameda to Richmond. And then when we moved to Richmond in 2005, after he graduated, we were able to move, but he was still living with us. People thought we were crazy when we said we're moving from Alameda to Richmond. Why? Nobody does that. And having worked there for years, it wasn't a big deal to us. We're like, yeah, we're moving to Richmond. We've been working there. What's the big deal? And every person that we said that to, they had this look. Like, I'm sorry, no, this is our decision, this is fabulous. So when we moved to Richmond, our son, now a teenager, 18 years old, just graduated from Alameda High, Ensenada, and Alameda, I always get them mixed up. At any rate, he just graduated from high school in Alameda, and he had a room, and at the time, I was still working as a mental health specialist for Contra Costa County. I work with children who have behavioral, emotional issues. But what I particularly do, I work as a wraparound facilitator. So that means that rather than pathologizing the child, we come from a strength-based perspective, a strength-based model, saying with the understanding that children do have emotional, they do have behavioral issues, but we can heal them, but they still have to go home. And so the model that the way wraparound is that we're working with the whole family now. But not only are we working with the family, we're also working with the school. We're also working with social services. And that's why it's called wraparound. You know, if you can visually imagine wrapping yourselves around the families and bringing everyone to the table. Steve mentioned earlier about the RPA, how we coalesced around a single issue. Well, that's what wraparound does, because before the wraparound model, you'd have therapists working with the child, then you had the school district working with the child, especially if there's emotional and behavioral issues. And then if they had social services, because perhaps they're in the foster care, you know, system. So now you've got the foster parents, and then for those who had some issues with the law, now you've got not just social services, but now you have their parole, probation rather. So now all these individuals, all these different entities are working by themselves. Everyone's trying to do their best. Where the teacher, we know what's best for the child, and the principal, and everybody's doing their thing in their own little, you know, their own little school district piece, bubble. Then you had the social workers, and they've got their parameters that they're working with. They have mandates, so they're working just around that piece, and we're going to keep this child out of trouble, and we're going to make sure they have what they need. And then you have the therapist who's working with the child, and that's all they're focused on. But with wraparound, what that I find is so similar, is that, you know, doing it that way was not really bringing about the effects that we all wanted. But when everyone sat at the same table together with one goal in mind, as opposed to individual goals, then that's when we see successes in the student and the child and the family overall. And so the goal of wraparound service is to enhance the quality of life for the children and their families. So just remember that. And so now we moved to Richmond. And I was still DJing at the time, so I think I just like having two jobs, mostly. The DJing was a lot of fun for me, so that was my side gig. I did weddings and, you know, birthday parties, company parties. So this one day, I remember before we left to go to the gig, it was in Napa, beautiful wedding in Napa. I thought regardless of who you, or if there is a being that you see as higher than yourselves, something, and for me that something is spirit, right? It's the spirit, it's the universe for me, said, clean out the garage so that when you guys come home, you're not unpacking your equipment in the street. You know, you can just, you know, get close, you can actually back into the garage, and that'll be good. Something told me that. So I said, okay, I'm gonna do that. So I did it. However, we didn't calculate the fact that her car was in the way. So now we're coming back. It's about 1:30 in the morning in Richmond, this town that we love and we're happy to be in. We're not afraid, because this is our people. This is our, you know, this is our people. So we came back, and had my wife said, oh shoot, the car's in the way. So she backed it out, and then we saw a car just kind of slowly creep by. We're like, okay, well, hopefully they get where they need to get. So by now she moved her car, I backed my car in, and now she's parked the car, she's walking up. At the same time, this young man in a hoodie starts walking up our driveway. And I've always believed, I still continue to believe, we should not be afraid of each other, right? We're all in this together. So I wasn't afraid, I should have been, but I wasn't. I'm thinking, maybe he's lost. So at that time, I roll down my window, I'm still in my car, he says, can I help you? And then he pulls out a gun. And never been so terrified in my life. So at that my wife is there, now he's got the gun pointed at her. He tells us, the same time, another one comes up, he's got his hand in his pocket, so you don't know if there really is a gun in his pocket or not, but you don't want to take that chance. So when they instructed us to close the garage door and go in the house, you know, everything is for fight or flight. Everything in me is on high alert and trauma and everything. So a long story short, after they taunt us, they go through the house, you know, where's this, where's that, do you have this, do you have money, do you have anything? We finally make our way around, and our son is in his room with his headphones on, so he's hearing none of this. He's not hearing you sit there and don't move. He heard none of that. So when they finally came around to his room, we didn't want him to go there, but they did. They point the gun at his head and asking him if he's selling or if he's affiliated, and this guy's like, you know, he's got his rabbit cage and his rabbit, his pet, his guitar, his games, you know, that's what he does. He's a nerd. And we love that about him, and we love that. So when they did that and to him, they told him, you know, stay where you are. It was so traumatizing. But the thing that, and I say all this because this was the point where which I decided I wanted to run for political office, was when the two of them were standing there, guns pointed at us, saying, they said to our son, you know, they asked him first, you know, is this all you? And he said, yeah. And he says, must be nice to be loved. And so as terrified as we were, that, I'll never forget that line. Because even though both of us were working in the same clinic with children, that right there, we're glad we came out alive, but it was like, how hurt must this young man feel? Like how many resources is he not able to have? Like what is it that he needs in his life that he's not able to have? And so I stopped using the word at-risk youth, and I say, I work in a community with children who are in need of healing from, you know, systemic racism, you know, corporate greed, and so many other things. So that's why I decided to run, and there was a wonderful campaign that the RPA was running at the time, and it was Measure T, I think it was. And so I just finished my MBA with an emphasis in marketing, so I just knew, I knew everything about marketing now, right? So I saw the sign outside my office, and it said, it was just a lot of things, because you know, progressives, we like a lot of information. But I just learned the most minimum, keep it really, really simple. So I looked at one of the signs, I called the number, I exercised, because we kept seeing lots of Gail McLaughlin signs. There weren't any other signs up beside Gail. So we're like, well, let's who is this woman? Let's see who she is, because if she wants to be our mayor, we should know. We're just moving here, we need to know what's going on. So we were never politically active in Alameda, and not even the time that I come to California. So somebody, I called them, and I said, you guys, instead of all those words, just say Measure T, taxes, Chevron, not you, period.
Good advice.
And so someone called me back. His name was Juan Reardon. He's the guy that created this little mini booklet, this booklet here, and you may have seen him. Yeah, he's in there?
This is Juan's booklet.
Yes,
format.
yes, his booklet. So he asked some questions, and he said, huh. I said, well, I don't know if you guys have enough money to get some new signs. And he's like, well, we'll see. So next thing I know, he's contacted me and asked me, would you like to be on the Economic Development Commission? And I said, well, I don't know, what does it entail? And that was basically how, next thing I knew, after the Economic Commission, he asked me if I wanted to run for City Council. And I decided I really would like to be able to be a part of the council, because that's my opportunity now to know, because I know what our families and children and what these hard-working families, I know what they need, I know what the children need, and I would love to be in a position to be able to create some policies that improve the quality of life for them. So I started running. You know, I'm one of those folks, I think I continue to be that kid inside that just jumps in, and even though she may not necessarily know what she wants to do, she's jumping in. I tell this story about my brother. I could swim enough to save myself, but not really to save someone else. But as a kid, I was like, go ahead, you know, you want to get on the high board, go ahead, I'll be right here to catch you. And my little brother, bless his heart, you know, he did it, and we both sank and almost drowned. so the lifeguard saved us. But I didn't think about it. It's like, hey, let's do it. It'll be fun. Didn't quite think it through. So when he asked me to be on the council, I just knew that I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be able to create policies. I wanted to be able to level the playing field. And so I jumped in. And once I jumped in, that's when Chevron jumped in. Well, wait a second. I said I wasn't going to be very long. Here I am telling these awfully long stories. My apologies. But Chevron jumped in, and it was really in ways that wasn't very obvious. And by that I mean I heard whispers. So I come into this city. The reason we wanted to move to Richmond is because as much as we loved Alameda, we really wanted to be in a city that was more diverse than Alameda, because Alameda was pretty majority white, and we wanted to be in a more diverse city like Richmond. And at the time, Richmond was predominantly black, and then Latino, and then white and Asian. So we really were happy, and we saw all these African American groups, these black groups that we're thinking, wow, that's amazing. Let me connect with them. And so as I attempted to connect with them, I was always pushed away. Well, later I find out, well, these are really conservative black groups that are in bed with Chevron, or were in bed and continue to be, some of them. So as I tried to sort of make friends, I was pushed away, but I also heard rumors, right? And the reason why a lot of the communities that they led were saying things like, I heard you're not black. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know, look at me. And I'm pretty dark, you know, look at my hair, you know. But I don't know, don't get no blacker than this.
Right.
But they weren't convinced. They thought because, you know, I identify as a Latina, then I must not be black if I'm Latina. So it's really, and I learned later that this was Chevron's way of dividing us. So no, she's not really black, and if she's not really black, she doesn't care nothing about you. And but she'll probably care about the Latinos. Well, not realizing, because yes, I am Latina, but I'm black first and foremost. That's what people see. So even in the Latino community, I have to prove myself, because I don't have a Spanish surname. My last name is Beckles, living in a Latin American country. I don't have I'm not what we consider Latino looking, right? Because people oftentimes don't forget that Africans were all over the world. You know, we landed all in lots of different places besides America. So no, you know, that Chevron really used that ignorance to divide us and to help and to make people not want to trust me. And so they didn't trust me because they felt like I wasn't black. Well, I think what they said was African American, because I personally identify as black. Because whether I'm if I'm an African American, I'm black. Because the other thing for me is you can be white African American. You can be, you know, white, living from South Africa or wherever in Africa, and you are considered you're African American, right? Whether your skin is looks like yours. Like, so anyway, so I prefer black because I'm black in Africa. I'm black in America. I'm black in Latin America. So because that's how I chose to identify, Chevron really used that to create this trust. So in 2008, the very first time I ran, I lost by about 200 votes to Tom Butt, he's been around for a long time, but that's really amazing. But that's really organizing and a lot of organizing. And I'll wrap it up by saying that that's what we have to continue to do. We have to be able to not allow them, the powers that be, to divide us. I feel that we need a wraparound program for our democracy, right? So we have folks from different backgrounds, right? Different races, ages, maybe even thought processes. We all have to come together and really make a difference in our democracy. And so I'll take questions, and I think before I even take questions, I want to say that I am so impressed by this model because the next time I ran in 2010, we won because of volunteers, taking small donations, large went for those folks who are able, and we did it, and we beat Chevron, we beat their lies, we beat everything, we beat their strategy because people now we're starting to wake up. And now in this last election in 2016, people are really awake. So we didn't have to send out a whole lot of mailers because the mailers that by the end of the election with a stack this high, they knew now, oh, here comes another 3 mailers today, paid for by, Chevron, major Chevron, the Chevron Corporation with blah, blah, blah. And so now our communities, they learn that, do that. Look at the back and see who's paying for it. Because if it doesn't say that it's paid for by the candidate themselves, like in our case, we were paid for by Team Richmond. Small, not big corporations. And so we were able to win those elections, mayor, many city council races, big money by helping people, by educating people, and now that folks are awake, helping them to just feel empowered in the process by participating in any way they can.